This week on To the Contrary.
First, women's political involvement in the age of Trump. Then, will these women be the voices of American women in the White House? And undocumented mothers and immigration raids.
Hello, I'm Bonnie Urbay. Welcome to the Contrary, a discussion of news and social trends from diverse perspectives. Up first, has the Trump administration caused average Americans to become more politically involved?
The organizers of last month's Women's March are calling for a general strike, a day without a woman, on International Women's Day. The goal is to build on the march that drew millions of people to take action. For many, it was a case of first impression. Elizabeth Wade of Richmond, Virginia, was never politically involved or active before President Trump nominated Betsy DeVos to head the Department of Education, and the U.S. Senate confirmed her. But that was a turning point for Wade, who describes it this way.
I truly did not understand how someone who essentially had no qualifications to be the head of the public education system could not only get nominated, but be so heavily considered and then eventually elected.
She called and emailed her senators' offices, Mark Warner and Tim Kaine.
It didn't go per se in our favor. It doesn't mean that it won't deter us or others from reaching out to these senators again or, other elected officials.
In addition to making first-time calls to Senate offices, she became politically active on social media, posting articles about DeVos on her Facebook page.
Social media has been a huge platform for me. The more I became educated, the more I wanted to educate my friends and family. I basically put it out there. I said, this is something I'm extremely passionate about. It's something that I really want others to read and kind of educate themselves about as well.
Wade says it's not out of the realm of possibilities that someday she'll run for political office herself. The same types of reactions to President Trump and his cabinet appointees are causing thousands of women to run for political office who never have before.
She Should Run is a nonpartisan organization that works to inspire women and girls to see what's possible in elected office. So it's really targeting that woman who's not a political animal, but is somebody who's engaged and a leader in her community. Those women who are out there who are thinking about running and maybe for the first time, and maybe they don't see themselves in those roles right now. I would just say, it is in fact you who we need, because we do need that diversity of voice, that diversity of experience, those new ideas, if we want to have the strongest democracy possible.
Earlier this month, Secretary Hillary Clinton made her first public video appearance for the 2017 Makers Conference, saying the future is female.
Despite all the challenges we face, I remain convinced that yes, the future is female. You are the heroes and history makers, the glass ceiling breakers of the future.
So, Congresswoman Norton, is Hillary Clinton right? Is this a turning point for American women in politics?
Surely it is, Bonnie, and hurrah for us, rah, rah, rah. But what Trump is doing, all of it, was promised during the campaign, and yet the majority of women voted for him.
It will be a turning point if we let it be. Going to one march isn't going to change anything. Women need to figure out how to amplify their voices, stay plugged in, and eventually run.
Well, in my native India, they say Shakti is the name for feminine power, and I think this is the age of Shakti. What I invite people to recognize, though, is that feminine power is on all sides of the aisle. 30 million women voted for Trump, and we should not forget that they stand also empowered at this moment.
I think democracy is a contact sport. So I think if Trump brings more people into the conversation and more women run, that's good for all of us.
I read somewhere that 13,000 women are signing up to run as a result of the march.
Probably more than that. I don't even think we know. I don't think the numbers can tell us anything yet, because women are not only feeling plugged up on various sides of the aisle. I know a lot of conservative women still feel like, and I know a lot of conservative women wanted to go to that march and felt like they couldn't be accepted there. So it's, I think
there
time
was
will
a
tell us.
contingent of pro-life feminists there.
They showed up just because, but the organizers did, close the door on a pro-life group and say you can't be part of the organizing party as much as I know.
That's my really deeper concern, is because when we think about women, I don't think that we should have, blinders on about what women we want empowered. There's judgment being made right now on women who voted for Trump, for example. I call it the scarlet tee that women wear now if they voted. I've met so many of them who keep it a secret in their lives because they're afraid of losing their jobs. They're afraid of losing relationships and family members. And nobody should live with shame for their political voice and their vote.
I think the fact that women are more engaged, and I think with women also marrying later, Gen X women are marrying later, millennial women will marry later. I think that also, the changing gender roles will also change what options women feel like they have in terms of running for office.
This greater engagement of women in the political process, remember, women outvote men anyway, is
well, there are more women than men.
Yeah, well, that does help, doesn't it, Bonnie? All of that is to the good, but women need to do. I'm a little worried about this. Every woman running. Mm-hmm. We need women to get together and decide which women they think can beat these Republicans. These people are in heavily
or Democrats.
But if they're if they get together and decide to go for a Joni Ernst, for example, or the Mary Fallon, governor of Oklahoma, they're going to be no different than the men they're replacing.
They won't be, and that's what's wrong in the House at the moment. There really is no difference between the Republican women and the Republican men. How you diversify
that. But is it your place? Let me just ask to tell Republicans what to do.
My position has been the position of feminists for human time. The more women, the better. The more women, the better. It would be a better world. It would be a better government. Look, this is not to play around with now. We're in the kind of situation in the House of Representatives where what could be voted, we now are grateful for the filibuster. Some of it is so extreme. The Republicans are so at odds with one another that I'm predicting right here and now that the Affordable Health Care Act will not go down because there's so many factions. Well, if there were women, Republican or Democratic women, I think women could help figure this out.
Well, but wait, they're going to repeal the Obamacare without another replacement in place, right?
And I think when you consider that what it takes to repeal and replace, that to say undo something, replace it with something as good. The Republicans have no experience with structural reform, and I don't see how they can do it. They don't have anything on the table that shows they can.
What I'm concerned about is that what I see is really a failure of the Democratic Party right now to actually have leadership in America. What I see is a Democratic Party that is so fixated on destroying the presidency with this hashtag resistance, hashtag resist. Next week there's going to be protests at these town hall meetings.
And protests at the town hall meetings when the members are out of session.
And these are orchestrated.
And a strike by women on March 8th.
But I'm not going to be striking because this is a strike, just as I didn't go to the Women's March. That march wasn't for me. I voted for Donald Trump. I'm a lifelong liberal, and it did not speak to women like myself. That strike is also only speaking to women who are on the left side of the aisle. And we have to honor all women, I believe, and not shame anyone.
The strike is troublesome because people lack child care and they need to go to their jobs. And so I'm glad it's happening. I think peaceful protest is a cornerstone of our democracy. I think it's really great. I personally won't be there because I think it's better for me, to show up and show the staff that I work with that
do your job.
Listen, let's do our work, and we can do this in other ways. We can send the same message in other ways. So there's definitely differences on how to do things, how to amplify our voices in the age of Trump. just as Sam Bennett was saying, she admires Trump for energizing a whole crop of women that may have felt that the government is stacked with men. I mean, there's still less than 25% of women in the entirety of the U.S. Congress.
Has his election energized young Republican women?
Oh, certainly.
I think so. Yes,
certainly.
absolutely.
Yeah.
I hear from them too.
Absolutely. I think you definitely have this sense that it's a new day and you can do things differently. For nothing else, you can do things differently. Donald Trump is doing things differently. And I think that's another barrier that's been for women in terms of not feeling as though they could compete with men. You stand up against a guy, you're shorter, all the optics of it, really. And now you
visuals.
The visuals of
optics is everybody uses that word and it's wrong. It's about what your optician does.
What the visuals of being, we saw it with Lazio and Hillary. Like, how do you run against a man? How do you run against a woman? Donald Trump has just thrown open the door to doing.
Well, he's let anything go. Yeah,
and
so anything goes.
It would be good to see women of every kind out there. I want to know what your evidence is. If you look at the 500,000 women who came to the march and those who came with them, the issues at least were Democratic issues. And if the Republican women have issues, maybe the march wasn't the place for them, but somebody ought to get out here and say,
but I thought
he's energized me too.
We've even had this discussion on this show. Often, women on the right are not welcome in the feminist,
Yeah, you don't have to use that avenue. Use your own avenue.
Well, even
but Dana, let's get back to reality here just for a second. Neither group of women welcomes the other when they're on the extreme fringe of the other side. I mean, the reason there are two parties is they represent two different issues. So if you disagree strongly about one major issue, of course you're not going to welcome the other person into your event.
But here's the thing. My very best friend would categorize herself as a communist. We don't agree on a lot of things, but we stay friends. She worked for Michelle Nunn. So I can disagree with you violently about something, but it doesn't mean I'm not going to be your friend and that we can't agree on other things.
Oh, look, we do this.
Last word, Asa.
Well, what I'm seeing, though, is an intolerance of the tolerance-loving left. And I will be very straight up about that because after coming out of the closet, as I did, I have felt more hate than I have in any time in my life here in America from the left, unfortunately. Women also who have turned on me as having been a traitor now to the cause of feminist movement.
And I've had that very same experience for being critical of Trump from my own party, a party I helped build.
Right.
And it's frustrating, right? Isn't it? It's just, why can't we all understand?
The answer has to be in the middle.
Well, I think the internet is the Wild West, and if you're going to write columns, and if you're going to tweet, and you're going to post opinions on Facebook, which I don't do because I don't want to get I don't want to get anyone angry at me, and I'm not affiliated with either party. So.
I wish people would just, we need to talk about this dynamic, though, because there are a lot of people, they write to me secretly, and they say that they have to keep things under the cover because they're afraid.
Okay,
they're afraid.
Let us know what you think. Please follow me on Twitter at Bonnie Urbay or at To The Contrary. From Main Street to the White House.
At his first solo press conference, President Trump told reporters First Lady Melania and daughter Ivanka will be advocates for women in the White House. This week, Ivanka Trump brought together women leaders for a meeting with President Trump and Canadian Prime Minister Justin Trudeau. Trump announced he'll launch the U.S.-Canada Council for the Advancement of Women Business Leaders and Female Entrepreneurs. The initiative's goals include growing women-owned businesses with access to capital, retaining women in the business world, and supporting working mothers. Also tasked with focusing on women's issues is White House counselor Kellyanne Conway. She's under pressure from the Office of Government Ethics, which has requested she be disciplined for publicly endorsing Ivanka Trump's product line. And there have been questions about her credibility after a number of TV appearances that showed her either to be out of the loop or purposely misleading.
So, Rena Shah, let's start with Kellyanne. Is she on her way out? Is she in trouble?
I believe she will be in trouble. I think it's getting to a point where there will be an investigation. There are members in the House who have said this was completely an ethics violation. There are citizen groups, that want this to be handled to the full extent. I am not sure that it will be entirely from the White House. The executive branch, I don't think, will take much action. They've counseled her, but I think the legislative branch will do the due diligence here.
Do you think it's the president himself or Steve Bannon, who supposedly is, the Wizard of Oz behind the curtain?
I think the president quite likes Kellyanne. I think he's always been pleased with her work, and it shows. She has this post because the president believes she's capable and she's strong and she's competent. She is the person, I believe, who is partly responsible for his win. When she came in, there was a marked difference in his campaign. Now, of course, we should give credit where it's due. He is the candidate. He was the person, but her strategic input, I think, was pivotal.
I agree with that. I think she's a very talented woman.
And of course, for 20 years, she was a panelist on this show.
Absolutely.
She was. I think she really
know how to pick them.
I think she really is talented. I think she has intellectual depth. But I think she is not in the loop. So they throw her out here because she's the best talker in the administration. But they don't let her sit in on the councils of the administration. And now they're going after her. I predict this. He's not going to let them have her. He's a loyalist. You're absolutely right. She built this campaign more than anybody else, right. And I don't think he's going to cut her out.
When you talked about not pushing her out there with no or wrong information, that's somebody trying to sabotage her, right?
It sure is, and it's within the administration.
Well, point of clarification, she actually does book her own appearances, from what I'm told, and I think she wants to be out there just as much. I'm making an assumption here, but I think everybody in this administration believes that FaceTime with the American public is something that has paid them in dividends, and they are not scared of doing it. But I think there's only so much you can defend, and when you aren't in the room all the time, given sometimes logistical constraints and whatnot, or maybe sometimes you're just not invited in, there will be mishaps, there will be slip-ups, and I think we're seeing that become very public.
Okay,
because the media's just loving it.
Let's move on to Melania and Ivanka. Is he going to set up a council on women and girls, and are they really going to have any power?
Well, I don't know the details of whether he will, but I imagine that he would, because we have a strong daughter of the president. We have a strong woman who is his wife. She was a successful entrepreneur in her own right, and what I am concerned about, going back to the initial point that we've talked about, is that I see this constant disrespect also of the women that are in the Trump administration. We should never have allowed it when it happened with Barack Obama's first lady, and in the same way, I think we have to stand up for the dignity of all women, and that's what I see really also becoming a problem in our society today.
I think Ivanka's going to be really a force to be reckoned with. I mean, I think the fact that she's walked away from her clothing line to be here full time, and you've seen her, escort her father to the coming home of a Navy SEAL who was killed. I think she's her father's best counselor. So I think she's very serious about advocating for women, and I think we will see much more from her.
I don't know much about what they're saying on the internet, but I think both women do enjoy respect, and they've not been the targets the way the administration and itself and Donald Trump has now. I know Ivanka because this so-called Trump hotel is my bill, only it wasn't called the Trump Hotel. Believe me, civil servants are who chose who would finally get it, and you had to put a lot of money on the table. But I got to deal with her. Impressive, smart young woman. Do you think there will be a council on women and girls? And if so, is he going to put any money behind it? Because nothing works without financial support.
Here's the thing. I think Donald Trump, I think he could do it, and I think we would put money behind it because he's practical. He means to do what he says. I mean, we've seen that in 3 weeks. He means to do what he says, and if he's going to do it, this is the president who would put money behind it and back it, and he's got a daughter there to make sure she does.
All right, terrific. From women's rights to immigrant rights.
2 high-profile deportation cases of undocumented immigrant women are drawing national attention as being unusually harsh. Jeanette Vizguera is seeking sanctuary at a Denver church, where she says she'll stay indefinitely. The mother of 4 who has been in the U.S. for 20 years was denied a stay of her deportation order stemming from 2 misdemeanor convictions. And last week, an undocumented mother of 2 was deported after checking in with ICE in Arizona. She had been convicted of having a false Social Security number. At least 600 people have been arrested in at least 6 states by ICE agents in the last week, following an executive order calling for a crackdown on the estimated 11 million immigrants living in the U.S. illegally.
So should there be special considerations for mothers of children and not deporting a woman because she goes for her regular appointment and all of a sudden she's on a bus and across the border?
Though he was much skewered in the press conference that he had yesterday, President Trump did say at one point that he wanted an immigration policy with heart. And I do believe that. There is a serious issue for the young dreamers. There's a serious issue for mothers. And we have to come up with some kind of compassionate solution to this very serious problem that we've got.
You know, the thing is we do have laws. And the thing is we're making certain exceptions for women and children. I mean, if I'm a guy, there are guys who want to be here, who are working hard, who are sending money back to their mothers and their daughters, and it's just, we have to draw a line. And I know that he's obviously struggling with DACA, and he's struggling with how do you do this in a compassionate way. But you know, at some point, you have laws. There are people standing in line to get into America in Senegal, in Seoul, in lots of places. And
India,
China, who are trying to respect our laws to do it the right way. And when you set up these two systems, you really create a lot of hostility within a society.
I wonder, I have a question. In the Senate, Senators Perdue and Cotton have a bill that would cut the number of legal immigrants from 1 million per year to 500,000. Would that...
That's probably unprecedented in American life. You know, the notion of cutting the numbers. We used to just keep people out based on what country they come from. But you just want to cut everybody out. Maybe you think the whole problem
Well, it's not everybody.
away.
It's half of everybody. But would that be acceptable to Democrats?
Of course not. And it would be unacceptable, I think, across the board. The treatment of immigrants is as venal as it is heartless. Whatever happened to the Republican notion of family unification, tearing apart women from their families where the children may be full citizens and separating them by sending the mother back? The way to do it is the way we've been doing it based on priorities. And indeed, Trump has said, let's go after the criminals. Let's go after the criminals first. If you have something left over and there's not family unification involved, maybe you could get other people.
Do you differ as the child of immigrants and a big part of your family being immigrants? Do you differ with your party on immigration?
I think there are a great many Republicans that have said, look, our party's never been in the business of splitting up families. Governor Jeb Bush was one of the first people to come out and really say, we are never to split up families. And so we have to have compassion in how we approach this. And I think there should be special cases. I definitely took issue with President Obama with the swipe of a pen one time, just granting amnesty, essentially. To so many who had broken laws. And as a daughter of legal immigrants, certainly it hurts to see people break the law and still be able to stay. But I do think there should be exceptions. You cannot take a mother away from her children. I think we just have to go back to basics on that.
Just really quickly, I came also as a legal immigrant, and I have the therapy bills to prove it, that I stayed back in India because my mother got the visa first, and we couldn't meet the financial requirement because that's the rule of law. While there
What's the financial requirement?
Oftentimes when you immigrate, like my father was here for his PhD studies, and then he had to be able to prove first that he could afford to support my mother. So he saved every day. I talked to him about it the other day, and he got a ticket for her. And then she came over, and I was 2 years old in India. And then my mom babysat a little girl named Ida and Heather to collect the $120 for the TWA flight for my brother and me. And that was 2 years of separation that we had because those were the laws. And
who took care of you?
My grandparents. Mm-hmm. And so, in our traditional Indian culture and in traditional societies, there's not, an issue that you've abandoned your children. But there's pain. And you can probably hear it in my voice now because no matter what, 40 years, 50 years later, and I'm sensitive.
So you disagree. Well, let's get back to policy.
But I'm sensitive to the separation today.
You differ with what ICE is doing right now. In other words, Trump's policy.
Well, I recognize why it's happening because we have an illegal immigration problem. but I do want to find compassionate solutions because I know that the pain of breaking up families is very deep.
Well, and I think it's also important to note that so far, I mean, granted, he's only been in for about a month, but 74%, he's actually taken fewer convicted. He's actually, Obama did more in terms of general.
Right, he deported more people.
Yeah.
Why didn't he get the flack that
Because
Trump
he
is
didn't
getting?
put a big bright light on it the way Trump does.
No,
He didn't. And
one of the reasons is most of his were taken at the border and did not break up families. At the border, he turned down more people, and that is why he has this record.
Okay, that's it for this edition. Please follow me on Twitter and visit our website, pbs.org/tothecontrary. And whether you agree or think to the contrary, see you next week.